When we have joining us now to discuss further on this bilateral relations, Mr. Amsri Ajanaku, the Executive Director of Grassroots Center for Rights and Civic Orientation. He's joining us via Zoom from Kano. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ajanaku.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure to be here.
A pleasure to have you. Now, on the Foreign Affairs Minister from China, what would you say is the objective of this relation with Nigeria?
I think first and foremost, this is more of a build-up on previous diplomatic shuttles between Nigeria and China. The fact that not too long ago, President Tinubu was also in China, and part of what came out of that engagement was the fact that Nigeria expressed lots of admiration for the development strides that China is making, the fact that a lot of people are being pulled out of poverty and the technological innovation and all of that. But in this context, I think it's very instructive that the Chinese foreign minister has actually pivoted to the issue of security, the question of training our troops. 6,000 troops, are going to be trained. 1,000 policemen will be trained. I think this also relates to the sensitivity of the Chinese to the realities of insecurity in places like Nigeria, where we have the Boko Haram insurgency and also the banditry in the northwest. So I think there's a growing understanding that all of the talk about trade, all of the talk about development, whether you look at it from the context of what is known as the Belt and Road Initiative, and all of those discussions cannot take place in an atmosphere where there's insecurity in some parts of the country. And so the cooperation is being pushed in that direction now. And of course, Nigeria is also trying to bring to bear its whole notion around economic diplomacy, the fact that issues of trade, issues of leveraging on trading with China and all of that, is coming to the discussion. And I think this is very important in terms of how we couch our foreign policy as a country.
Okay, Mr. Ajanaku, well, some critics have come out to say, based on these loans gotten from China, especially in the aspect of infrastructure, it could put the country in a debt trap. Now, how can Nigeria address a situation like that while leveraging on the gains?
Yes, so the relationship between Nigeria and China has a lot of upsides. The upsides is like what the president was talking about when he visited China the last time. He was really talking about innovation. How do we learn from the innovation and all of that? But of course, there's a downside of that relationship, which is the extent of the transparency and accountability of some of the development aid that is coming. And generally, across Africa, there is this whole discussion ongoing about how accountable, how transparent, are the projects that have come from the Belt and Road Initiative of China. The Belt and Road Initiative is a very massive project that seeks to deliver infrastructure, deliver certain projects that would directly benefit economies in the countries that are being targeted. But the question is, what has been the value for money for those projects, and what has been the cost in terms of repayment of loans and the debt situation? So there's a huge concern about that. And we believe strongly that there needs to be more accountability in this respect. We welcome the push for development. We welcome the push for having cooperation that would make the lives of people in Africa better. But the question is, how do you ensure that those projects bring value for money, and also that you do not also have the countries being so much indebted that at the end of the day you then question the cost of the project. So our role as civil society, for instance, is to also ensure that there is accountability in those projects. We get to know what those projects are and how much they are being is being paid for them. and then of course the repayment terms for the loans that will be paid back. We need to also understand what it is as citizens, and then also be able to engage those processes.
Okay.
One other very important aspect of this whole discussion, one other very important aspect of this discussion is the whole discussion around overcapacity, what has been described in the global economic discussion as the overcapacity of China. The fact that it is the biggest exporter in the world, and then it tends to stifle the economies of other countries in the global south that are also trying to come up when it comes to manufacturing.
Okay.
So it's a very important discussion, because if
Mr. Ajanaku, sorry, let me just come in there. Let me just come in there. I know you have a lot to say in that perspective, but let's also look at the impact on a broader scale, looking at the geopolitical dynamics. We have competing interests, global interests, like the United States, the European Union, and Russia. How much impact do you think that will have going by this strengthening of bilateral relations with China? Very briefly.
So
very briefly.
Like for Nigeria, it is quite interesting that Nigeria has tended under the Tinubu administration to diversify its foreign policy outreach. We saw the president recently visiting France, reaching out to the West, and also being very, very close to China in terms of economic cooperation. The president has been more or less like the champion of democracy in West Africa, which is something that is good for Nigeria in terms of we being like a force to be reckoned with when it comes to the promotion of democracy, like serving more or less as the bastion of democracy in West Africa and the larger parts of Africa. So in that sense, our outreach to the West is well understood. The fact that we're a democracy, and then we are not going to slide into authoritarianism. But of course, there is the economic dimension of it. China also brings to the table. There's the infrastructure dimension of it, which China also brings to the table. So it is really very smart that the Tinubu administration is reaching out on all sides, reaching out to the West, also reaching out to the East, represented by China, to balance out all aspects of our national developmental aspirations.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Amsfree Ajanaku, for your thoughts on the news. Thank you. We do appreciate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.